Good afternoon, sir. We will start the meeting within 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, madam. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual event. Before we begin, let me guide you through a few instructions to make this experience smooth and enjoyable for all of us. Please keep your microphones muted unless you are called to speak. If you have any questions or comments during the event, feel free to use the chat box or comment box and we will address them at the appropriate time. Also, kindly switch on your cameras during the virtual photo session later to make the moment special. Now, without further ado, let's move on to our agenda. In every gathering, whether physical or virtual, it is important to start without a moment of reflection and gratitude. To lead us in prayer, I now invite Mr. Rajesh Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to leading the prayer.
Let us bow our head and put ourselves in the holiness of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear Almighty and ever loving God, we glorify and thank your name. You have showered us with so much blessing, and your presence continuously reminds us of your faithfulness and guidance. May we humbly ask you to shower your blessings on our speaker today of your greatest inspiration so that he may share the most of his knowledge, his field of expertise, and to his respective topics. May we also observe the invaluable knowledge, experiences, and put it into practice what we may learn today. Bless all the participants. May they grow in grace and wisdom. Provide them knowledge, understanding, and counsel. Your infinite blessings would mean the success of this 5-day international faculty development program. May we be a living witness of your genuine love through the enactment of the knowledge acquired through this activity. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Thank for those beautiful words. It's my pleasure to invite Mrs. Rajeshwari, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to deliver the welcoming remarks.
Good afternoon to all present here. As we begin this event, let us first seek the Lord's blessings for His grace and guidance throughout the session. I would like to acknowledge our esteemed founder, Reverend Father Dr. J.E. Arulraj, whose leadership continues to inspire us, though he is with us today in absentia. I also warmly welcome our principal, Dr. R. Ruben, whose unwavering commitment has been instrumental in the growth of our institution. A heartfelt welcome to Reverend Sister M. Baby, our esteemed administrator, for her invaluable support and guidance. I also extend my sincere greetings to all the heads of the department whose dedication strengthens the academic framework of this institution. We are honored to have with us today's chief guest, Dr. R. Raja Raman, Professor, Department of English, Annamalai University, whose presence enriches this gathering. A warm welcome to all the students, research scholars, and academicians from various institutions, as well as the technical support team, whose efforts behind the scenes make this event possible. May this day be filled with fruitful discussions, insightful exchanges, and the spirit of learning. Thank you all for being here, and let's look forward to a successful and meaningful session.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words. Now, without further ado, to welcome keynote speaker of today's session, I would like to call Mr. Alan Desha, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to introduce our resource person.
Good afternoon, everyone. I take immense pleasure in welcoming our resource person today, Dr. R. Rajaraman, Professor, Department of English, Annamalai University. Sir's area of specialization is American literature and British literature with a teaching experience of 23 years. Sir has also published 52 research articles in reputed journals, also guided 105 MPhil research scholars, 28 PhD scholars. Sir has also presented papers in various conferences, seminar, workshop, and symposium. I welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Most respected Secretary, Principal, Administrator, Head of the Department, faculty members, student friends, and participants from various colleges. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Let me go ahead. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I am here to offer my insights on various approaches to literature in general and reader response criticism in particular. And for the organizers, let me share this to the organizers. They consistently said, I am R. Raja Raman. I am K. Raja Raman. Thank you. See, there are 9 common critical approaches to literature. Let me briefly define all the 9 common critical approaches that we employ in literature. And then I move to my specific topic, reader response criticism. Let me repeat it again. There are 9 common critical approaches. And the 9 common critical approaches that we employ in literature are formalist criticism, biographical criticism, historical criticism, gender criticism, psychological criticism, sociological criticism, mythological criticism, reader response criticism, and deconstructionist criticism. See, when we try to offer a clear-cut definition for formalist criticism, we can say that this approach, this formalistic approach, regards literature as a unique form of human knowledge, as a unique form of human knowledge that needs to be examined on its own terms. All the elements necessary for understanding the work are contained within the work itself. We need not go outside the text. Everything is contained in the text itself. That is how formalistic criticism views a work of art, and especially that is how it looks at the text. See, of particular interest to the formalist critics are the elements of form. When I say elements of form, the elements of form include style, structure, tone, imagery, etc. And all these elements are found within the text. All these elements, as I pointed out, elements of style, structure, imagery, tone, metaphor, simile, irony, paradox, all the elements are contained within the text. They are found within the text. Then we may ask, what then is the primary goal of this approach? The primary goal of formalist critics is to determine how all these elements work together. How all these elements work together with the text content, with the content of the text, shaping its effect upon the readers. The effect of these elements are felt upon the readers. The readers put all these elements together to make a criticism of their own of the text. This is the brief definition of formalist criticism. From formalist criticism, I move to the definition of biographical criticism. See the term, see everything is contained in the word itself, biographical. This approach begins with the simple but central insight that literature is written by actual people and that understanding of author's life can help readers more thoroughly to comprehend the work. This approach, in particular, this approach states that the history of the author, the biography of the author, the biography of the author will make us comprehend the work of art in a better way. And that is how biographical criticism looks at a text. So it differs. It differs from formalist criticism because formalist criticism doesn't attach significance to any such a thing. See, it is the text that speaks, not the author. The author, the author needs to be erased from the text as far as the first criticism that I pointed out is concerned. Whereas in the case of biographical criticism, it stresses that the biography of the author helps us to understand the text in a better way. So hence, it often offers a practical method by which readers can better understand a text. However, a biographical critic must be careful not to take the biographical facts of a writer's life too far in criticizing the works of that writer. The biographical critic focuses on explicating the literary work by by using the insight provided by the knowledge of the author's life. And we have a very good book. We have a very good book, Johnson's Lives of the Poets, wherein you find Johnson focusing on the biography of the writer and also the biography of the writer shaping the literary text. One fine example is Johnson's Lives of the Poets, as far as biographical criticism is concerned. Now, from formalist criticism and biographical criticism, let us now move to the third one, historical criticism. And this approach seeks to understand a literary work by investigating the social, cultural, and intellectual context. It includes the social, cultural, and intellectual context that produced it. So a context that necessarily includes the artist's biography and milieu. So it takes into account social, cultural, intellectual, I feel a bit disturbed. Social, cultural, intellectual, social milieu, political milieu, all these things are taken into account in historical criticism. So from now we move to, so from formalist criticism, biographical criticism, and historical criticism, we move to gender criticism. See, this approach, gender criticism, examines how sexual identity influence the creation. Sexual identity influences the creation and reception of literary works. So it's originally an offshoot of feminist movements. Gender criticism today includes a number of approaches, including the so-called masculinist approach advocated by Robert Bly. So the bulk of gender criticism, gender criticism is feminist and takes a central concept that the patriarchal attitudes that have dominated the Western society, that have resulted consciously or unconsciously in literature full of unexamined male produced concepts, male produced assumptions. Feminist criticism attempts to correct the imbalance by analyzing and combating such attitudes by questioning, for example. Then the next one is psychological criticism. This approach reflects the effect that modern psychology has had upon both literature and literary criticism. See, fundamental figures in psychological criticism include Sigmund Freud, whose psychoanalytic theories changed our ideas, changed our notions of human behavior by exploring new or controversial ideas, new and controversial areas like wish fulfillment, sexuality, the unconscious, repression, ego, and the like, as well as expanding our understanding, expanding our interpretation of how language and symbols operate by demonstrating their ability to reflect unconscious fears, to reflect unconscious desires. And another psychoanalytic critic, Carl Jung, whose theories about the unconscious are also a key foundation of mythological criticism. So psychological criticism has a number of approaches, but in general, it usually employs one or more of three approaches. An investigation of the creative process of the artist, what is the nature of literary genius, what's the nature of literary talent, and how does it relate to normal mental functions. A psychological study of a particular artist, usually noting how an author's life, how an author's biographical circumstances affect or influence their motivations and or behavior. The analysis of fictional characters using the language and methods of psychology. So we now move to the definition of sociological criticism. See, I have told you so far about formalist criticism, biographical criticism, historical criticism, gender criticism, psychological criticism. From psychological criticism, we now move to sociological criticism. What does it mean? What does sociological criticism mean? See, this approach examines literature in the cultural, economic, and political contexts. This approach examines literature, looks at literature from the point of view of, from the context of culture, economy, and politics. See, sometimes it examines the artist's society to better understand the author's literary work. Other times, it may examine the representation of such elements within the literature itself. One influential type of psychological criticism is Marxist criticism, which focuses on the economic and political elements of art. And it emphasizes the ideological content of literature because Marxist criticism often argues that all art is political. It argues, Marxist criticism often states that all art is political. All art is political, either challenging or endorsing the status quo. It is frequently evaluative and judgmental, a tendency that can lead to reductive judgment. As when Soviet critics rated Jack London better than Faulkner, Ernest Hemingway, Edith Wharton, and Henry James because they thought that Jack London illustrated the principles of class struggle more clearly. Nonetheless, Marxist criticism can illuminate political and economical dimensions of literature than other approaches. See, other approaches overlook these elements. In the case of Marxist criticism, it includes political and economic dimension. Then mythological criticism. What then is mythological criticism? This approach, mythological criticism, emphasizes the recurrent universal patterns underlying most of the literary works. In the case of mythological criticism, it incorporates insights. It takes insights from anthropology. Mythological criticism takes insights from anthropology, psychology, history, and comparative religion. Mythological criticism attempts to explore the artist's common humanity by tracing how the individual imagination uses myths and symbols. There are some myths and symbols common to different cultures and different periods. See, one key concept in mythological criticism is archetype. You might have all heard the term archetype. As students of literature, we might certainly have heard the term archetype, and we have a very good definition for archetype in almost all books of literary criticism. And archetype, when we look at archetype, what does archetype mean? It means a symbol, character, situation, image. It may mean anything. It may mean anything. It may mean a symbol. It may mean a character. It may mean a situation. Or it may mean an image. An image that evokes a deeper universal response. And this entered from a Swiss psychologist called Jung. According to Jung, all individuals share a common pattern. All individuals share a common pattern. In the words of Carl Jung, we share one common pattern, which Jung calls as collective unconscious. What does Jung mean by collective unconscious? Collective unconscious is a set of primordial memories common to the human race, existing below each person's conscious mind, often deriving from primordial phenomena. And there are primordial phenomena. What are the primordial phenomena? For example, the sun moon, fire, night, blood. See, this is a universal phenomenon, common phenomenon. You find everywhere, these things. You find everywhere. You find sun everywhere in the universe. You find moon everywhere in the universe. Fire, night, day, blood. These are all the common primordial phenomena. Archetypes, according to Jung, trigger the collective unconscious. Another famous critic, Northrop Frye, defined archetypes in a more easy way, in a more limited way, as a symbol, usually an image, which recurs often enough in literature to be recognizable as an element of one's literary experience as a whole. Whatever be the definition, regardless of the definition given by different critics, archetype, there are various definitions. So, regardless of the definitions that these critics use, mythological critics tend to view literary works as sharing a similar pattern. They tend to view literary works in the broader context of works sharing a similar pattern. Now let me move to the next one, reader response criticism. This approach takes a fundamental tenet that literature exists not as an artifact, not as a mere artifact upon a printed page, but a transaction. It's a transaction. It's a kind of transaction. Transaction between the physical text and mind of a reader. There is a transaction. Transaction between the two. Transaction between the physical text and the mind of a reader. It attempts to describe what happens in the reader's mind while interpreting a text, and reflects that and states that reading, like writing, is a creative process. Not that writing alone is a creative process. Reading can also be viewed as, reading should also be seen as a creative process. Often we tend to say that writing alone is a creative process. Whoever embarks upon this idea that writing alone is a creative process, we cannot admit it as a kind of fact, because it is reading which makes writing a better one. A text cannot live, cannot exist on its own. A text can never exist on its own. A reader is always necessary for the survival of the text. So reading, like writing, is also a creative process. According to reader response critics, literary texts do not contain a meaning. Reader response critics say texts do not contain a meaning. Meanings derive only from the act of individual readings. Text does not contain any meaning. Meanings are derived. Meanings are derived from reading. So reading is a creative process. We derive at various meanings. We derive at possible meanings. We derive at impossible meanings. We derive at probable meanings. And we also derive at improbable meanings, conceivable meaning, inconceivable meanings. The reader's hands are free to interpret the text. And so reading is also a creative process, not writing alone. And two different readers may derive completely different interpretations of the same literary text. Likewise, a reader who rereads a work years later may find the shockingly different, may look at the work in a shockingly different way. So the reader keeps on changing. The reader is always in a flux. The reader keeps on changing. The reader keeps on changing based on his own experiences. So reader response criticism then emphasizes how religious, cultural, and social values affect readings. It also overlaps. It also overlaps certain notions. So each text creates limits to its possible interpretations. Then the last one is deconstructionist criticism. Let me give you a brief definition of deconstructive criticism, as I gave the brief definition for other 8 approaches. So let me repeat what I have said so far. I have spoken about 8 common critical approaches so far, though I said 9. I am yet to speak on the ninth one: formalist criticism, biographical criticism, historical criticism, gender criticism, psychological criticism, sociological criticism, mythological criticism, reader response criticism, and the last one that I am going to define, that I will be focusing, is on deconstructionist criticism. This approach rejects the traditional assumptions that language can accurately represent or present reality. Deconstructionist critics regard language as a fundamentally unstable medium. They call language as an unstable medium. They don't look at language as a stable medium. They look at language as an unstable medium. The words, for example, why they call it as an unstable medium? Because the words tree and dog, for instance, let's look at the 2 words, tree and dog. Undoubtedly, these words conjure up different mental images for different people. Let me say the word tree. Let me pronounce the word tree. See, the tree doesn't have a stable medium. When I pronounce the word tree, when I say the word dog, everyone has his own or her own image of these 2 words, the words of language. So language doesn't have a stable medium. They look at language as an unstable medium. Deconstructionist criticism looks at language as an unstable medium because, for example, if we take these 2 words, these 2 words conjure up different images to the audience. See, for example, when the word tree is mentioned, I immediately think of a particular tree which may not be to you. So the image of these 2 tend to change from one to another. So language doesn't have a stable medium. Language is an unstable medium. So, and therefore, because literature is made up of words, literature possesses no fixed single meaning. No fixed single meaning. There is no single meaning. There is no fixed meaning. There is no fixed meaning. There is no single meaning. According to one critic, Paul Dimon, deconstructionists insist on the possibility, impossibility of making the actual expression coincide with what has to be expressed, of making the actual signs coincide with what is signified. So as a result, deconstructionist critics tend to emphasize not what is being said. They are not concerned with not what is being said, but how language is used in the context. That's what they mean. So now let me come to the core point of my title: reader response criticism. See, reader response criticism is a school of literary thought, is a school of literary theory, is a school of literary idea that focuses on the reader, or whatever you call it, on the reader or audience, and his or her experience of a literary work. In contrast to other schools and theories that focus attention on the author or the content and the form of the work. See, for example, if we take anything, see, for example, if I ask you to imagine, let us imagine, a stream. Let us now imagine a stream. I know very well that you all know what a stream is. Let us now imagine a stream that runs over the mountain. There is a stream that runs over the mountain. All around, all around the stream. We look at the stream that is running through, and all around there, around the stream, what do we find? There are bright colors. There are bright colors around the stream. Excellent vegetation. Songs of the bird. Unpolluted air. This is what we found. This is what we see. This is what we find around the stream. Let us imagine a stream that runs over the mountain. See, a stream that runs over the mountain. So around which you find bright colors, vegetation, bird songs, unpolluted air, laughter of children from the other side of the valley. Look at the landscape. Look at the landscape that I gave you. Look at the landscape that I gave you. What is that landscape? This landscape is the text. This landscape is the text. This landscape is the text. Then the next question arises. Who created this? The landscape is the text. I told you, imagine a stream that runs over the mountain. All around there you find a lot of things. An excellent vegetation, bird song is there, bright colors are there, and you have unpolluted air, and you can also listen to laughter of children from the other valley. This landscape is the text. Who created this? Who is the author? Does it contain the author's signature? If there is no viewer, how does one know? How does one understand? How does one appreciate the text? How does one appreciate the text? The landscape is there. The landscape is there. Is the perceiver. Is the perceiver. Reader, just an idle viewer. A subject, just receiving passively the beauty of the scene, the beauty of the text. Or the next question arises. Does the text even exist? Does the text even exist without a perceiver reader? The landscape without a perceiver. Imagine a landscape without a perceiver. Imagine a text without a reader. Or can we say that beauty lies only in the eyes of the beholder, the interpreter, the reader, and that without the viewer, there is nothing called beauty. There is nothing called beauty without the viewer. Someone must be there. Someone must be there to admire the beauty. Someone must be there to admire the landscape. Someone must be there to admire whatever being created. So beauty cannot exist without an admirer. So if there are no admirers, then there is nothing called beauty. So, for example, there is divine music. Even if there is divine music, we need a listener. There is divine music, divinity in music. Divinity in music, you listen to a divine music. See, we need a listener to appreciate its divinity. We want a listener to appreciate the music. We need a listener to appreciate the music. See, for example, let me give you another example. See, a teacher, a teacher cannot, a teacher cannot teach without students. Students are needed for a teacher. A teacher cannot cry in the vacuum. A teacher cannot shout in the vacuum. A teacher needs a student. In the similar way, see, you can take on various examples from various things. See, see, even if there is divine music, we need a listener. We need a listener to appreciate its divinity. So, art is it an interactive process, something that depends on the object as well as the beholder as an active participant. See, where the beauty lies is the question, and each theory gives prominence to one aspect or the other. If you admire, now the question comes, if you admire the creator, if you admire the creator, or if you admire the author of the text without much thought, the spectator, if you admire the creator, if you admire the author of the text without much thought about the spectator, then you are a classicist. I will call you a classicist. But if you believe, if you have absolute faith, if you believe that there is no beauty without a beholder, if you believe that there is no beauty without a beholder, you are a reader response theorist. I will call you a reader response theorist if you believe that there is no beauty without the beholder. So still, one can ask whether a beholder can look at an ugly object or disturbing scene and still say that it is beautiful, even if many others say it is not beautiful. Do we need group consensus or community agreement to say something is beautiful or ugly, or is it a matter of individual opinion? It's very easy. It's very easy to say that it is a reader. It's very easy to say that it is a reader who breathes meaning into the text. I quote Roland Barthes, the reader who breathes meaning to the text. A text cannot live on its own without the reader. Whoever be it, whoever comes to your mind, if I ask you, there are about 64, 65 participants. If I ask you, who comes to your mind, there are, you may tell different writers who come to your mind. What makes them alive? What makes them alive? Who makes them alive? Who makes the great writers alive? Who makes the classical writers alive? Who makes Milton alive? Who makes Shakespeare alive? Who makes Dryden alive? Who makes Pope alive? You raise such immediate response from everyone will be reader. Who makes them alive? A text cannot exist on its own. It needs a reader. It needs a reaction. So if at all these writers are alive, it is because of the readers. The readers make the writer alive. Then who then is at the center? So I join with Hart in declaring that it's the reader who breathes meaning to the text. The reader who breathes meaning to the text. So the reader keeps on changing. The reader, see, for example, if I read Shakespeare's sonnet when I was a student like you, my interpretation of the sonnet is not the same as I interpret now. 25, 30 years of experience have shaped my interpretation. So the reader within you, the reader within me, the reader within me keeps on changing. So the reader is always in a flux. I am a reader. I read one of the sonnets of Shakespeare long ago when I was a student of first BA. Now, my interpretation is completely different from the one that I created when I was in my first BA. So the reader is the same reader, but the mind of the reader keeps on changing. The flux is always there. Reader is always in a flux. The reader is not static. The reader is evolutionary. The reader keeps on changing. It's not the same reader. See, the reader is the same, but the mind of the reader keeps on changing. The interpretation keeps on changing. So it's the reader who breathes meaning to the text. So, following Roland Barthes, one can declare that the author is dead and the reader is the author because the reader is the creator. The author is the creator of the text. The author is a mere creator of the text. The reader is the creator of meanings. So, it's the reader who creates meaning. When I say it's the reader who breathes meaning to the text, it's the reader who creates meaning to the text. But then there are a lot of questions to be answered before we privilege the reader. If we make the reader the center, we are only shifting the center from one transcendental center to another, from the author to the reader. Secondly, there are readers and readers. There are different types of readers. A reader can be, when you see, a reader can be ordinary. A reader can be ordinary reader. A reader can be naive reader. A reader can be a naive reader, and a naive reader without any background. A reader can be highly sensitive. A reader can be sophisticated. So sophisticated with a sophisticated reader with the right kind of background, with the right background of everything. So we have sophisticated reader. A reader can be superior. There are superior readers. A super reader with a lot of literary competence. A super reader with a lot of literary knowledge. A reader can also be the author. A reader can also be the author who produced the text. A reader can be the virtual reader, one imagined by the author at the time of writing. Sometimes the author might have imagined a reader in his mind when he wrote a poem or when he wrote a novel or when he wrote a drama or whatever be it. So the intended reader, then we have the intended reader, unintended reader. A reader can be an ideal reader, perfectly insightful one. An ideal reader, he may be an ideal reader. A constructed reader. A reader can be biased reader sometimes. A reader can be a biased reader. Then there are ideologically neutral readers. So a reader can be a prejudiced reader with one particular author, with one particular work. So there are readers and readers and readers. We have all kinds of readers before us. Then the question arises, who is the reader? Who is the reader we have in mind? Who is the reader we have in mind while talking about the reader who breathes meaning into the text? So the reader again, as I told you earlier, the reader keeps on changing. The reader is not the same. The reader keeps on changing. And the reader keeps on giving newer interpretations. Well, what then? Neither the reader nor the text is constant. So what then is reader response criticism? So reader response criticism is a school of literary thought that focuses on the reader and their experience of a literary work. So in contrast to other schools and theories, and that the focus, they give attention primarily, other criticism primarily attached significance to the author and the form of the work. Reader response criticism is a school of literary criticism that ignores both the author and the text contents, confining analysis to the reader's experience and reading that particular work. So these are different interpretations that we offer. And the meaning of the text. The meaning of the text is transactional. When I say the meaning of the text is transactional, I mean the result of the transaction between the reader and the text. It's a kind of transaction between the reader and the text. The reader reads the text, and he maintains a kind of transaction. Then the transaction, the resultant is outcome. The result of the transaction, the result of the transaction between the reader and the text. We have an outcome. The outcome is his interpretation. The outcome is creation. So creation, what does the reader create? The reader creates meaning. So the reader plus the text. When you ask me to give a formula, the reader plus the text is equal to meaning. Because because the reader develops a kind of transaction with the text, and the outcome is meaning. And the outcome is meaning. So the reader plus the text is equal to meaning, and the reader is an active participant. The reader is an active participant with the text in creating meaning. And the reader allows for a wide range of legitimate responses, but there are some limitations as well. The reader utilizes the gaps, the blanks, which are said to exist whenever or wherever a reader perceives something to be missing between words, sentences, paragraphs, stanzas, and chapters. The purpose of the reader is to alter reader's assumptions and characters' ways of viewing the world. So reader, when he reads, the reader brings outside knowledge to the text. He uses this information to derive meaning from the text. So this is a huge process. This is an interesting process that every reader, every genuine reader, every passionate reader undergoes. Every passionate reader undergoes. Let me. Shall I take 5 more minutes? Shall I take 5 more minutes?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay. See, Stanley Fish, an American critic and the author of A Reader-Oriented Approach, gave an interpretation which we could not have imagined. We could not have imagined. See, in his popular book, it's not an essay, it's a book. It's a book. Is there a text in the class? It's a book. And in that book, you come across the essay, Is there a text in the class? In his popular book, Is there a text in this class? Fish reads Blake's The Tiger. See, we might have read both the poems. Some of you might have read both the poems. William Blake's The Lamb and the Tiger. See, he reads the tiger, Blake's tiger, in a different.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Sir, are you there? Sir, your voice is not audible. Left आया
I'm sorry, I got disconnected. So Blake's reading of the poem, but particular poem, is highly interesting. So he raised a question: Did he who made the land move? My son. Okay, okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So is there a text in the class? Fish reads William Blake's Tiger in a different way. He looks at the poem as an allegory of digestive system. It's a lament of the first person. The first person lament. What is that lament? See, there are two. These two are companion poems. One from Songs of Experience, one from Songs of Innocence, and the other from Songs of Experience. See, he looks at the poem in a different way, and he raises a question: Did he who made the lamb made thee? Because when he took when he took the meat of lamb, he felt himself comfortable. He doesn't feel any problem in his digestive tract. But when he when he tasted the meat of tiger, it's an entirely different one, and he doesn't feel comfortable with the tiger meat as he felt in the case of the lamb, and that is why the speaker raises a question: did he who made the lamb made thee? And he feels and he interprets that the speaker pays price for the price for the sin he committed. So this reading of the reader is at present may be against the canons of acceptability, and it may sound even ridiculous, but such a reading may become acceptable and even respectable at some other time. And no reading, however outlandish it may appear, is inherently, no reading can be regarded as an impossible one. Every reading will become a possible one at one point of time. And thank you for your patience in listening to me. Thank you. If you have any feedback, please tell me. If you have any clarification to seek, you are open.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your deliver on reader response criticism. Your explanations of how reader personal experience, emotions, and perspectives play a vital role in interpreting the text truly broaden as understanding of literary theory. Thank you so much, sir. We are now reached the interactive part of our session. Dear participants, if you have any questions, feel free to drop the in the chat box or use the raise hand feature and we will get to you. Let's take a few moments to address your queries.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, we received a question in a chat box.
Okay.
So I'm reading that question. Can reader response theory be applied even for autobiographical work and memoirs?
Yes, sir, it can be applied. You can apply this theory to all works.
Yes,
Hmm?
sir.
Even if, so you can see what, so be it an autobiography or biography or whatever be it, it's a text. It's a text. Text will have its own reaction. Text will have its own criticism. So even for autobiographies, readers are always there. It's the reader who comprehends whatever type of genre it may be. It may be a biography, autobiography, or a short story, whatever it is. See, even today we are writing thesis on Maya Angelou's autobiographies. So autobiographies can also be looked from the perspective of the reader.
Yes, sir. So, thank you, sir.
Thank
Sir,
you. Thank you.
sir, we received another question from YouTube live streaming. So I'm reading it. If each reader creates their own meaning from a text, how can we determine which interpretation are more valid and meaningful than others?
See, see. There lies the existence of a text. Why are texts alive? There, see, it's an excellent question. See, the reader keeps on meaning to the text. The reader, see, when Shakespeare wrote his plays or Chaucer wrote his poems, we never had this much of theories at the time. We keep on developing new theories, new concepts, and we keep on applying these new theories to the works of the great, even great writers. See, we apply new historicism in analyzing the plays of Shakespeare, and new historicism doesn't exist when Shakespeare wrote or when Milton wrote. See, these theories we keep on bringing new theories. So when you keep on bringing new theories, who is bringing new theories? It's the reader who keeps on bringing new theories, and all these readings at one point of time will be accepted. So we cannot say this is the only meaning of this one particular line. If I say child is father of the man, I cannot define child is father of the man. I cannot say this is the final meaning of child is father of the man, and it keeps on changing. The meaning keeps on changing. It's the reader who keeps on interpreting the text in his or her own way.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, we have received another one question in chat box. It seems to be a generalized question. Just I'm reading it. What theories can be applied to study artificial intelligence and its role in English language education?
Sir, I don't have much knowledge about this. I am sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Participants, if you have any other queries, please post it in the chat box and comment box. We are reading it. Behalf of you, we are reading it. Participants, those who are in YouTube live streaming, we are watching, you're reading your comments.
I don't know what does the questioner mean by symbolic order.
Okay. Yes, sir, we have received a question in a chat box.
Yes, symbolic order. See, when we don't look at the work from outside the system, if we don't look at the text from outside the text, when we look at the intention of the writer, then our interpretation tend to be fallacious, and therein arises intentional fallacy. When we look at the text from the author's perspective, from the author's point of view, then our interpretation said to be fallacious, and we will be entering intentional fallacy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we
Thank
have
you.
another one question from YouTube live streaming. I'm reading it. This question is from Dr. Roman. What kind of consequences does the reader response theory have on the mind of an author? He asking the consequences that happen in the mind of an author.
See, when I keep on when I keep on praising the author, how would the author feel? See, the author must be in a position to accept both positive and negative criticism. See, let me tell you, let me narrate what happened between between two critics. One poet and one is a poet critic, and the other one is a critic of 20th century. It's between Eliot and Emerson. Eliot and Emerson. Emerson wrote a criticism of his own of one of the poems of Eliot. Since both of them are contemporary, Eliot called Emerson and told him that this was not the intention when I wrote this particular poem. Then Emerson replied, Mr. Eliot, as and when you get your work published, as and when it comes in print, your job is over. It is left to me. It is left to me. I am a critic. It is left to me. That is the answer that Emerson made to Eliot. Though Eliot is a poet critic.
Participants, is there any other queries? Sir, thank you, sir, for this
Thank you, sir.
interactive.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
for this
Thank you, sir.
interactive sessions.
Okay.
Participants, right now we're moving on to the virtual photo session. Now let's capture this special international faculty development program with a virtual group photo. Kindly turn on your cameras. All participants, kindly turn on your cameras. I repeat, participants, kindly turn on your cameras. We are taking a virtual group photo.
Thank you all. As we come to the end of our session, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to our speaker and participants for a successful and engaging seminar. We hope the ideas shared today have sparked new perspectives and the connections made here will foster future collaborations across borders. Once again, thank you for joining us at 5-day international seminar on theory to practice contemporary trends and literary criticism. And we look forward to seeing you in future events. Thank you all.